Good afternoon and welcome to Plymouth's annual town meeting. This is coming to you live at Plymouth North High School, and we are now, if there are no objection, we're going to resume and we're going to open the annual town meeting. And we have an Article 1, and we have no action on Article 1 because it is withdrawn. And Article 2, we're going to hear the reports of the several boards, officers, and committees of the town thereon, or take any other action relative thereto. And before we go forward, I did want to thank those town meeting members who contacted me in advance with any motions. You can do that at any time. You can email me, you can call me. But we encourage you to do it in advance of town meetings so your motions can get in the motions book. But that's not to say that you can't have motions on the day of town meeting. However, what probably not to do is to hand the moderator a tiny slip of paper with a long motion that you wish to present, because I've got to review it. I've got to, in this case, it's financial. I got to review it with the Director of Finance, and I have to give it to Madam Clerk so that she has the text. So if possible, if you know in advance of town meeting that you have something you want to accomplish procedurally, please contact us in advance, either by phone or by email, because it'll help in terms of, but I've accepted that motion, and it'll be coming up later at this session. So, Mr. Canty moves the town vote to receive the reports of several boards, officers, and committees of the town thereon. Mr. Canty.
In a unanimous vote of 13 in favor, 0 in opposition, and no abstentions, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Article 2. Approval of this article will allow boards and committees to place their reports on file with the town clerk. Most board and committee reports can be found in the annual town report.
So I want to let town meeting know that when we had our motions meeting, we once again revisited the concept of a consent agenda. And a consent agenda is something that certainly other communities use. And when we last presented that to town meeting did not support it, although many of the articles that were bundled in the last consent agenda were not debated, and they were unanimously approved. So, as we go through the annual, I'm going to encourage all of you to think about whether or not there might be some articles that would lend themselves well to a consent agenda, to bundle them together, since they seem fairly routine and not debatable. This might be one of them. Any debate? If not, we're going to go to the vote on Article 2 when the light goes on. And we're supported today by OTI Technologies. We're also supported by PAC TV. You can vote now. Town meeting members can vote on Article 2, and it's a majority vote. And town meeting, once again, for those of you who have just joined us, they are in person at Plymouth North High School, the Center for Performing Arts. They're using a handset to vote electronically. We have 33 members of the 162 elected, and 33 are participating remotely, and they are using the vVoter platform with the Zoom webinar platform, and we are merging it all together for a hybrid. That completes the voting on Article 2 of the annual town meeting warrant. And 114 yes, 0 no, 1 abstention. It carries overwhelmingly. So as we scroll through the precincts, I will read into the record Article 3. Mr. Canty moves the town vote to establish the maximum amount that may be spent from each fund during fiscal year 2024, beginning July 1, 2023, for the revolving funds established in town bylaws for certain departments, boards, committees, agencies, or officers in accordance with general laws, Chapter 44, Section 53E1/2, as follows, and you have a table here. Mr. Canty.
In a unanimous vote of 13 in favor, 0 in opposition, and no abstentions, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Article 3. Approval of this article will set the fiscal year 2024 spending caps for each of the revolving funds listed in the materials pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53E and a half.
Discussion? Hearing none, we're going to go
Mr. Moderator?
Yes, I don't see anybody on the V-voter asking to speak, but I hear a voice.
Yes, Mr. Moderator.
Mr. DiNardo?
Hi, Mr. Moderator, Al Donato, Precinct 17. Just on this matter, I know...
Mr. DiNardo, do you have your V-voter? Can you click on? Thank you. Oh, there you go. Okay, go ahead.
I did. It's clicking in and out. But Mr.
Thank
Moderator,
you.
very quickly, I know you and I had discussed an amendment which I did not include in this, but I want the body to know that at the time I was asking that the Finance Committee, that we would direct the Finance Committee just to review these accounts. I spoke about it at COPC. The ruling was that this could not be amended, but in the meantime, the chairman of the Finance Committee made a public promise that once things quiet down, I know we're going through a lot, but between now and maybe the fall town meeting, that there will be a review of these revolving accounts. If you watched the Finance Committee last month in February, some of the new members were struggling to what is a revolving account. We have 20 of them. They come up to about $2 million. Again, I was not asking for an audit, more like a review of these accounts. I believe in oversight and on a promise that these accounts will be looked at and we'll deal with it. This way we can educate new members, what they are, what they do, and where this money is going. So I just wanted an FYI for the body. Thank you.
Thank you, Al Donato, Precinct 17. Any further discussion? If not, we're going to go to the vote. When the light goes on, you can begin voting on Article 3. The light is on. Everyone can now vote on Article 3. You have 30 seconds in which to vote. It is a majority vote. And we'll continue through the annual town meeting warrant. We're in our afternoon session live on April 1, 2023. We are at Plymouth North High School in person, Center for Performing Arts. We have concluded our lunch recess and we are back in the annual town meeting warrant. Revolving fund spending limits would be the vote currently before town meeting, and the vote is over. We are now going to see what the results are. 132 say yes, 1 no, 1 abstention. It carries, and we're going through the precincts, and as we do, we'll read into the record Article 4. Article 4, continuation of committees. Mr. Canty moves that the town vote to, pursuant to Chapter 173 of the General Bylaws, to authorize the 1749 Courthouse Committee, Plymouth Energy Committee, and the North Plymouth Steering Committee to continue with a review in 3 years at the 2026 Annual Town Meeting. Mr. Canty.
In a unanimous vote with 13 in favor, 0 in opposition, and no abstentions, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Article 4. Approval of this article will authorize the 1749 Courthouse Committee, Plymouth Energy Committee, and the North Plymouth Steering Committee to continue to operate for the next 3 years with a further review in 3 years at the 2026 Annual Town Meeting.
Frank Fager, Precinct 10.
Mr. Moderator, I have a point of order. My
Yes.
vote did not go through.
Okay, his vote did not go through on the last. If you want to see OTI over there in the corner, they can check your handset to make sure that it's working properly. And as we do that, we're going to continue now with the voting on Article 4. Is there any discussion? If not, we're going to go to the vote, and when the light goes on, you can vote. So we're voting on Article 4, the annual. You can vote now. Town meeting members are now voting on Article 4 in the annual town meeting warrant. It is the continuation of committees. Town meeting members have 30 seconds in which to vote. We will then proceed in the warrant, and we will continue for 2 hours, at which time we will take another recess. And the voting is by V-voter or by handsets for the electronic voting for those people who are in person at the Center for Performing Arts. The voting has ended on Article 4, and we will now hear the results. 138 yes, 0 no, 0 abstentions. So we've had a couple now that have gone through without debate and have been unanimous. We'll continue with the precincts while I read to the record. Article 5 is withdrawn. Article 6, salaries of elected town officials. Mr. Canty moves the town vote pursuant to General Laws, Chapter 41, Section 108, to authorize the annual stipend salaries of elected town officials as follows. Chair of Select Board, $4,500. Select Board, $4,000 each. Moderator, $2,000. It's a majority vote. Mr. Canty.
In a unanimous vote of 13 in favor, 0 in opposition, and no abstentions, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Article 6. Approval of this article will set the annual stipends for the Select Board and Town Moderator. There are no changes to the stipend amounts this year. The Chair of the Select Board will receive a stipend of $4,500. The 4 remaining Select Board members will receive $4,000 each, and the Moderator will receive $2,000. The funding for these stipends is included in Article 7A, the General Fund Budget.
Discussion? Hearing none, we will move to the vote. And once the light goes on, we'll take a vote. You can vote now. You're voting on Article 6 of the annual town meeting. It is the salaries of elected town officials. Following this vote, we'll go to Article 7. We have a number of motions under Article 7, and we have also motions to amend under Article 7. But currently we're voting on Article 6, and it's a majority vote. And this is coming to you live from Plymouth North High School on Saturday, April 1, 2023. It is our spring annual town meeting. We have 20 articles, and the voting has concluded on Article 6. 135 say yes, 0 say no, 2 abstentions. The motion carries. And we will continue as you see the results of the last vote. Mr. Canty moves the town vote. Motion 7A by subcommittee report as follows. Now, before we begin, I want to draw to your attention that you have a motion book, and you may wish to pull out the motion book and refer to it, because at the back of the motion book, and this is the motion book right here, there is a presentation of the operating budget. And as we go through the various motions, you'll see the various items, some of which are being amended. So for example, Article 7A, Motion Subcommittee Report A, you'll see that Mr. Canty moves the town vote to raise and appropriate $15,770,749, items 1 to 16. So on page 15 of the motion book, you're presented with the items 1 through 16. As detailed in the Advisory and Finance Committee Report A, Subcommittee Report A, and to meet said appropriation, raise the sum of $15,770,749 from the 2024 tax levy. Mr. Canty.
The Advisory and Finance Committee analyzes the town budget in various budget subcommittees that each focus on a particular section of the budget. As we have for the last several years, we will be presenting the Advisory and Finance Committee's budget recommendations to you by budget subcommittee report. We believe this will make the budget easier for you all to analyze, digest, and vote on. Each budget subcommittee's report has been provided to you as part of the report and recommendations of the Advisory and Finance Committee book. The first budget subcommittee report deals with Budget Subcommittee A's section of the budget. With that explanation out of the way, in a unanimous vote of 12 in favor, 0 opposed, and no abstentions, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends approval of this section of the budget as detailed in Subcommittee Report A.
Thank you, Kevin Canty. He is the Chair of the Advisory and Finance Committee. And you'll see we have a motion to amend Subcommittee Report A. Al DiNardo, Precinct 17, moves the town vote, increase item 11, elections and town meeting, all other expenses by $75,000 by transferring the same from free cash. Mr. DiNardo, do you care to be heard on your motion?
Yes, Mr. Moderator, very quickly, Al Donato, Precinct 17. Well, the reason why I am proposing this, I want to transfer $75,000 into the line item for special town meetings. Precinct 17, we just appointed a new town meeting member the other day. Just for the benefit of new town meeting members, Plymouth has 2 annual town meetings set in stone. Anything but an annual is a special. And it's unique today that we have a special town meeting. And this is just a venue in order for us to deal with these warrant articles. The reason why we have a special is because some of these articles did not make the timeline for an annual. So we can have a special at any time. Matter of fact, it can be called as quickly as 2 weeks. Well, I've noticed, I've served in town meeting in another community over 30 years. I noticed in Plymouth that there's sort of this talking points about the cost, and that's fine. But this is really just an accounting line that town meeting would say, listen, special town meetings are important enough to us that we want to set aside this money. If we do not use this money, which we would have to pay for anyways, regardless if we do this, it would go back to free cash. So this is similar to last fall when I proposed the quote $1 for symbolic that town meeting would have access to in-house counsel, and we have access to that now. So this is more about you, the body, sending a message to this government that special town meetings are important enough that cost is not going to preclude that decision to go ahead. The select board had called a special town meeting last June for Sandwich Road. Chances are we're going to need more of these specials. If the charter passes, you're going to have a 3rd meeting every year. And as we deal with more of these big city issues, as I have experienced, we're going to need more special town meetings. So I'm just, again, closing, I'm saying I just want the body to symbolically move this money over to say, yes, special town meetings are important enough to us that the cost, although it is expensive, it's important to us that we have these when necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, El DiNardo, Precinct 17. For those of you watching here and possibly at home, you may see that our remote participants can be heard, they can be seen, but depending on the bandwidth, their voice may not always line up with the video, as happened at times with Mr. DiNardo's presentation. Further discussion on the motion to amend to increase by $75,000. If not, we're going to go to a vote on the motion to amend Subcommittee Report A. When the light goes on, you can vote on whether to increase. Yes, you're voting now. Those of you who are remote can start voting. Those of you in the room here. So this is the motion to amend by increasing item 11 by $75,000. It is a motion from Precinct 17 Town Meeting Member Al DiNardo. And it is a majority vote on a motion to amend. And depending on the results, we will then go back to the main motion on Subcommittee Report A. Voting has ended. We'll now see the results of it. 72 say yes, 65 say no, 3 abstentions. The motion carries. We now have a new main motion, and you'll see in your packet that the new amount is $15,845,749. Any further discussion on the main motion as amended? I see one person who is shown here, but he's in person, so I'm not going to call on that person. So, further discussion? Yes, Mr. Hanlon, Michael Hanlon, Town Meeting Member. Good afternoon, Mr. Hanlon.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Michael Hanlon, Precinct 15. I just have a comment. I'm looking, you suggested that we look at our motions booklet at the budget figures in the back of the book. And I brought this up at the precinct caucus because I had the same comment then, or the same observation. I noticed when I looked through the budget that, well, let's take the motions book for example. I'm looking at page 15. It's Subcommittee A report. There are 5 columns there. The one in the middle is the 2024 department request. And then next to that, you have 2024 Advisory and Finance Committee recommendation. Nowhere do we know, at least that I have seen, do we know what the Board of Selectmen recommended or approved before it went to the FinCom. So I guess I'm asking the town manager and the finance director, is that and the finance committee, is that something we can get going forward?
Actually, Mr. Hanlon, in the past, I have given notice when the Board of Selectmen, the Select Board, have an approval on a matter that is separate from the Advisory and Finance Committee. And for this particular town meeting, I've been advised that the Select Board has agreed and approved all of the main motions presented by the Advisory and Finance Committee. So when there is a difference in the recommendation, it'll be noted, and I would call on the Select Board if they wanted to move to amend, which has happened at times in prior years.
All right, your comment makes me think of something different. You suggested, if I heard it correctly, that the Board of Selectmen approved the Finance Committee's recommendations. Doesn't the process work in reverse, where the Finance Committee approves the Board of Selectmen's recommendation?
I'll let the chair of the Advisory and Finance Committee comment, although I can tell you that for this town meeting, there was one vote which was different, and when it became known that there was a difference, there was discussion, and then I believe there was a revote so that they were consistent. So, Mr. Canty.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So that is correct what the moderator just indicated, and you are right that the process works in the reverse, generally speaking, and even this time it still worked that way. Just what happens is the Board of Selectmen make their recommendation, then they hand the budget over to us, which happened on January 10th. We then break into our subcommittees, review the budget, make recommendations to the entire Advisory and Finance Committee, and then it's the recommendations of the entire Advisory and Finance Committee, not necessarily the subcommittees, that are then the main motions that come before all of you. Now, in this particular cycle, many of the motions that we made were consistent with what the Select Board had originally looked to do before they handed the budget over to us in January. But there was a difference that the Select Board then, between when we made that recommendation and this meeting, the Select Board met again, and now they are consistent with our recommendation. But the process did play out in the traditional way. It's just the fact is that this time the Board of Selectmen met again and agreed with our subsequent review. Historically, in the past, sometimes the Select Board has taken a different view from the Advisory and Finance Committee, as the moderator indicated, and spoken at town meeting about whatever their perspective is on the given issue.
Mr. Hanlon?
Thank you for the explanation.
Thank you. Further discussion on the Subcommittee Report A main motion as amended? Seeing that no one is asking to be heard, we'll go to the vote. And when the light goes on, you can vote Article 7A motion, Subcommittee Report A. Light is on, you can vote. Town meeting members are now in the annual town meeting warrant. We have moved up to Article 7. We have a series of motions under Article 7. The first is Article 7A, Subcommittee Report A. Town meeting members are voting on that, which includes items 1 through 16. They're voting on the main motion as amended in the amount of $15,845,749. And town meeting is voting both electronically and remotely with the V-Voter platform. We are in the afternoon session of town meeting. They have 30 seconds in which to vote. While the light is on, when the light is off, the voting is ended. It is ended now. We are waiting for the results. 141 of 162 town meeting members voted on this particular motion, and we will now see the vote on the various precincts. 138 yes, 3 no, 0 abstentions. The motion carries. We will now move to Subcommittee Report B1, and Mr. Canty moves the town vote to raise and appropriate $82,943,762 for Subcommittee Report B1 budget items 17 through 31, shown in your book on page 16. As detailed in the Advisory and Finance Subcommittee Report B, for the purposes as listed in the budget attached to these motions, and to meet said appropriation, make the following transfers. And you have the information before you, Mr. Canty.
So although you will take 2 votes in relation to Subcommittee Report B's section of the budget, my remarks are in relation to both, and I will only speak this one time. So, with that in mind, in a vote of 9 in favor, 1 in opposition, and 2 abstentions, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve an appropriation of $83,999,062 for this section of the budget. This figure incorporates the recommendations made by Budget Subcommittee B in their report and an increase of $860,000 to the Salary Reserve Fund that was recommended at the Advisory and Finance Committee's annual budget hearing. This $860,000 increase is comprised of $800,000 designed to prevent any layoffs of school department personnel that may have otherwise been necessary if their budget was funded to be consistent with the town's financial planning efforts, as recommended and described in Budget Subcommittee F's report, and $60,000 designed to permit the potential hiring of a library outreach position as described in the library section of Budget Subcommittee E's report during fiscal year 24, should the town's financial health allow it.
Thank you, Kevin Canty, Chair of the Advisory and Finance Committee. Betsy Hall, Precinct 16, moves the town vote to amend Subcommittee Report B1 to reduce Item 22, Reserve Fund, Personal Services by $60,000. Betsy Hall, do you care to be heard on your motion? She'll be followed by George McKay, Precinct 8. Betsy Hall, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Betsy Hall, Precinct 16. I withdraw my amendment, my motion for an amendment.
Motion is withdrawn. Any further discussion on Subcommittee Report B1? George McKay, Precinct 8. Good afternoon.
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to have people comment on the $800,000 in this article that was taken out of the school budget and put into this as a salary reserve fund. We heard from the school earlier today that they're going to have increasing problems keeping their budgets within what the town wants them to do. And I think it's relatively unusual that we have almost $1 million, in this case it's $800,000 as a salary reserve fund. And I wonder if this is typical of what we're going to have to do going forward. So I'd like to hear from the Finance and Advisory Committee about that.
Kevin Canty, do you care to respond?
So this $800,000 being placed into the salary reserve is for this year, because the school, as they indicated earlier, had already gone through a round of cuts that saw 15 positions on the school side be defunded through attrition losses over this fiscal year that we're budgeting for. So not laying off anybody, but not backfilling positions or filling positions that are currently vacant. The town, on their side, saw 9 positions be eliminated through similar means. Not layoffs, but attrition losses, not backfilling positions. This $800,000 was originally sought by the Select Board and Town Management to be reduced from the school budget to bring in line with the town's overall financial planning to avoid the fiscal cliff. The school committee and school superintendent and administration indicated that that cut would require, if they were to go through with it, between 11 and 14 positions of active employees to be eliminated, meaning layoffs. The Budget Subcommittee F, was not in favor of laying folks off, and this compromise between the Select Board's position at that time and the school committee was sought instead to place $800,000 in the salary reserve account that they could use if they need to use it to pay these salaries. Now, I say if they need to use it because they are budgeting based on projections and indications that they're getting from the state. They have to budget them as they've been presented to them at this time. But over the course of the fiscal year as it unfolds, it is possible that they may not need to use this $800,000 to pay for these salaries because some of their other costs may come in lower than are currently being projected. But in fairness to them, they have to budget for them coming in as being projected. This money would be used last to pay those salaries if and only if it is necessary to do so. The salary reserve fund is supervised by the town manager and by the finance director, who could verify and work with the school department to ascertain that the money is necessary for this intended purpose. If it is not necessary to use it, any or all of it, any money left over in the salary reserve fund for this $800,000 is going to be earmarked for this purpose, and if it's not used, it would go into free cash in the following fiscal year, which could be used for any purpose that free cash is used. Offsetting the tax rate, paying for projects, transferring it into the special town meeting fund to send a message to the government that we're okay paying for those, whatever purpose that we wanted to use money in free cash for. But it might need to be used, some or all of it. If it does need to be used, then there would be a receipt, essentially, that, yeah, we used all this other money, and we needed this $800,000, just like we told you. That would be the school department speaking in that hypothetical. So in that situation, town meeting would have verification that, yeah, they really did need all that money that was necessary. And either scenario, at the next town meeting, when we're talking about in April of next year, about their budget going forward, we will have more information about whether they need this money for that purpose or not. And at the end of the day, the priority for the subcommittee and the Advisory and Finance Committee was to avoid having to go through this exercise at the expense of 11 to 14 employees and laying them off. This avoids that, provides money so that they will not be laid off, but does give the possibility that some or all of this money could be saved and consistent with the town's financial planning efforts, which is important to, I think, all of us. And this is, speaking from the process discussion earlier, this is the part of the vote that the Select Board took later to agree with us in our recommendation subsequent to our hearings. So I hope that answers your question.
I think it answers my question in detail, and I agree with what's being done here this year. My other question was, does this set a precedent to how we handle the budget in the future?
So, no, not necessarily. Town meeting doesn't really set a precedent. Town meeting can do something this year and do something completely different next year. It may be something that could be used in the future if we wanted to use it, but it would not require us to use it in the future. So if at the end of this process, town meeting and the town in general likes this process, it could be used again, but it is not binding the town to use this method ever again if they do not wish to do so.
Thank you, Kevin Canty, Chair of the Advisory and Finance Committee. Any further discussion? Seeing none, let's move to the vote. When the light goes on, you can vote on Subcommittee Report B1, raise and appropriate $82,943,762. Do not vote until the light bulb is on. Thank you, it's on now. Please vote. You're voting on Article 7A, Subcommittee Report B1. Town members are reminded that if you vote prior to the light going on, it comes up on my screen as speak on the motion. There are 5 of you who voted early, so you may want to vote again. But We are voting electronically with the handsets. Sometimes we have operator challenges. And we are also participating remotely with the V-Voter platform. And the voting has ended. You can now check to see if your votes were correctly tabulated. 136 say yes, 3 say no, 1 abstentions. It carries. We're now going through the various precincts, and as we do, I am going to read into the record Subcommittee Report B2. Mr. Canty moves. Town vote to raise and appropriate $1,055,300 for Subcommittee Report B2, Budget Item 31, Community Debt, all other expenses, and to meet said appropriation, transfer $1,055,300 from the Pavement Management Stabilization Fund. It's a 2/3 vote. Item 31, again shown on page 16. Mr. Canty.
I'm all set.
He's all set. He spoke earlier on both. This is a 2/3 vote. Any discussion on the subcommittee report B2? Seeing none, let's go to the vote. We can start voting when the light goes on, and we're voting on a 2/3 vote for subcommittee report B2. Town meeting can vote now. They're voting electronically with a handset. They're also voting with the voter platform. And we also are supported by OTI Technologies. They're here to help people who have problems with their handsets. We also have PAC TV supporting us with the technology and helping us to have the video and the audio for this town meeting. We are grateful for the support of PAC TV and also for the support of our vendor OTI Technology. The light is on. When it goes off, which it has done, the voting ends. We will now see what the vote is for this particular motion. 139 yes, no, 0, 2 abstentions. It carries by more than 2/3, and that completes that subcommittee report. And so while you're looking at your precincts, I will read Subcommittee Report C. Ms. Canty moves the town vote. Raise and appropriate $34,173,647. Items 32 to 43, as detailed in the Advisory and Finance Committee Subcommittee Report C, and to meet said appropriation, transfer $130,000 from Municipal Waterways Fund, transfer $28,900 from Environmental Affairs Fund, and raise the sum of $34,014,747 from the 2024 tax levy. And this is, again, a majority vote. Mr. Canty.
In a unanimous vote of 11 in favor, 0 in opposition, and no abstentions, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends approval of this section of the budget as detailed in Subcommittee Report C.
Thank you. Geraldine Williams, Precinct 8, moves the town vote to increase Department of Marine and Environmental Affairs, line 40, personal services by $10,000, line 41, all other expenses by $15,000, and line 42, fuel and utilities by $5,000, and to meet said appropriation, raise the sum of $30,000 from the 2024 tax levy. Welcome, Geraldine Williams.
Yes, Geraldine Williams, Precinct 8. As we all know, tourism is an important and growing part of Plymouth's economy. Much of it is based on our beaches, harbor, ponds, and other natural resources. The Department of Marine and Environmental Affairs protects and enhances these. David Gould and his department has brought in over $66 million in grants in the past 10 years to help restore Town Brook and Jenny Pond areas, the Eel River, and the foothills. He has helped ponds such as Great Herring Pond that I live on test water quality to see where the pollution problems are coming from, to remediate runoff situations, and to advise and help us monitor the cyanobacteria conditions that protect our citizens. And he performs other valuable services on many of the 400 ponds here in Plymouth. The DMEA Natural Resource Wardens, together with fire and police personnel, protect the citizens and property of Plymouth and our visitors. They patrol our harbor, beaches, ponds, and trails, protecting and assisting citizens. Yet this department was asked to cut one natural resource warden. I believe they're called specialists, I'm sorry. Out of only 3 in the department, they were asked to cut one. This is not a vacated position. This is an active person. The police and fire were asked not to fill some vacant positions, but DMEA was actually asked to cut this vital position of protecting our citizens. David Gould and Chad Hunter, the harbor master, reworked their budget to be able to retain the warden by reducing various other expenses, overtime, and seasonal help, and by supplementing their budget with funds from the municipal water and waterway funds. This means that there will be less money available for upcoming projects and grant matches. I'm proposing adding $25,000 to the salaries and other expenses to try and make up for some of these cuts. The fuel cost line in most other budgets was increased from last year to allow for rising fuel costs. But although DMEA requested a $5,000 increase, it was cut back to last year's level. So I'm also requesting $5,000 to be added to rectify this situation. The work of this department is recognized as exceptional, both regionally, nationally, and even worldwide. David Gould has received numerous awards such as the NOAA Environmental Hero Award, Coastal America Spirit Award, Coastal America Partnership Award, and the Gulf of Maine Sustainability.
How much more time do you need?
10 seconds. With this amendment, I hope to recognize the importance work done by the DMEA and to restore a bit of funding to enable them to further protect our environment and citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion, William Arienti, Precinct 6.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I support the amendment, but I want to go a little further in a little different direction. Last week, in my precinct, Precinct 6 in Manomet, we had a pretty, what could have been an extremely severe situation where someone drove over the cliff and into, close to the water. It could have been a medical emergency, it could have been a fire emergency, and it could have been an environmental emergency. But due to the fast thinking, fast response, and professionalism of our fire, our police, EMS, as well as the road services, we were able to prevent that. And I'd like to say that this, is a surprise, but it's not, because I've seen the way that our fire and our police and our EMS work. And I would like to put on record that we as this body recognize the hard work and dedication proven by our EMS and our first responders, and that we be on record as supporting them in whichever way we can. And I thank you very much for the time.
Further discussion on the motion to amend Subcommittee Report C. If not, we're going to go to the vote, and you can begin voting when the light is on. It is whether to increase the amount that was in the main motion, and you can vote now. It was a motion to amend by Jerry Williams, and she's asked to increase the Department of Marine and Environmental Affairs, Personal Services by $10,000, all their expenses by $15,000, fuel utilities $5,000, and to meet the appropriation, raise the sum of $30,000. This is a motion to amend. It's a majority vote. Town meeting now voting. The light is on. They are voting in person on the handsets and remotely with the V-Voter platform. The voting is over. We'll now see what the total result is of the vote. 116 yes, no 20, abstain 1. The motion carries. The new main motion as amended, $34,203,647. Is there any further discussion on the main motion as amended under Subcommittee Report C? If not, we're going to finish going through the precincts on that motion to amend to make sure the votes are correct. And then once we see from all the precincts, we'll go to the main motion. We now have seen all the precincts. Please, let's go to the vote on the main motion. Under Subcommittee Report C, it's as amended, $34,203,647. When the light goes on, you can vote on the main motion, Subcommittee Report C. The light is on, you can now vote, and town meeting members will be voting over the next 30 seconds, and this is for the items shown 32 to 43 in the motions book. It's found on page 17, and town meeting members are voting. This is essentially a roll call vote, which is the case on all of our votes today, since we are using the electronic voting and the V-Voter platform, both of which merge together to give us a final combined vote for our hybrid town meeting. That concludes the voting. 136 say yes, 4 no, 1 abstentions. The motion carries. And while you're looking at the results, I'm going to read into the record. The motion for Subcommittee Report D, Mr. Canty moves the town vote to raise and appropriate $13,253,080, items 44 to 88, as detailed in the Advisory and Finance Committee Subcommittee Report D, and to meet said appropriation, transfer $10,000 from the Cemetery Perpetual Care Fund and raise the sum of $13,243,080 from the 2024 tax levy. It's a majority vote, and town meeting will find the record of this on page 18 in the motions book. Mr. Canty.
In a vote of 6 in favor, 5 in opposition, and 2 abstentions, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve an appropriation of $13,253,080 for this section of the budget.
Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, we're going to go to the vote for Subcommittee Report D. When the light goes on, let's hold off. Yes, welcome. Go ahead.
Carl Mason, Precinct 18. I was wondering, Mr. Canty, if you could comment on the divided vote on this subcommittee article.
Mr. Canty, do you care to respond?
Yes, so this section of the budget, when the subcommittee met, they heard the dollar amount hadn't changed, the total dollar amount for the department from when the select board had originally voted on that, but there was a change in the sense that there was a desire to hire a manager position within that department for this upcoming fiscal year, and that's the subcommittee originally agreed with that. And then at our budget hearing, a member of that subcommittee had changed his mind and made a motion that we adopted as originally proposed without that management position, again, not changing the bottom line number. There was discussion about the positives and negatives of both approaches, and at the end of the discussion and debate, we decided to go as the Advisory and Finance Committee with a recommendation 6 to 5 to 2 of the original number that did not include the management position.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was a question from Carl Mason, Precinct 18. Any further discussion? Yes. Mr. Neville.
My name is Peter Neville. I'm in Precinct 10. And I'm wondering whether or not within the personnel services, are there any allowances for uniforms for the people working within the Department of Public Works within their collective bargaining agreement? Because I know that those allowances are made within other collective bargaining agreements for the public safety. And I feel like the people that work in DPW should have some allowances for uniforms. Thank you.
Thank you. Sheila Scarzi is the Acting Director for the Department of Public Works. She is going to respond to town meeting member Peter Neville from Precinct 10. Good afternoon, Sheila Scarzi.
Hello. We do have uniform allowances for our fleet division. Those would be our mechanics. The other divisions within DPW will purchase sweatshirts, jackets, and T-shirts when their budget allows, but there aren't specific allowances. We also do have, we supply PPE, which is personal protective equipment. So that's vests on construction sites, hard hats, safety glasses.
Thank you. Sheila Scarsey, Acting Director, Department of Public Works. Subcommittee Report D. If there's no further discussion, we will proceed with the vote. When the light is on, we will vote on Subcommittee Report D. Town meeting can vote now. You're voting in the annual town meeting warrant, Article 7A motion for Subcommittee Report D, and it's a majority vote. Town meeting is continuing through the warrant and through the budget book as we continue for the 2024 fiscal budget year that will begin July 1st. When the light is off, the voting will be concluded. It is off. Voting has ended. We're now going to see the results of this motion. 133 yes, no 5, 3 abstentions. It carries. I will read into the record the next motion as you look at your votes and scroll through. Subcommittee Report E. Mr. Canty moves the town vote to raise and appropriate $5,022,520, items 49 to 66, as detailed in the Advisory and Finance Subcommittee Report E, and to meet said appropriation, raise the sum of $5,022,520 from the 2024 tax levy. And again, items 49 to 66 can be found on page 19 in your motions book. Mr. Canty.
In a unanimous vote of 12 in favor, 0 in opposition, and no abstentions, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve an appropriation of $5,022,520 for this section of the budget.
Betsy Hall, Precinct 16, did you care to be heard? No, thank you. Subcommittee Report E, any further discussion? If not, we're going to go to the vote when the light is on. This is a majority vote. You'll be voting now. Please vote on Subcommittee Report E under Article 7A, shown in your motion book. And we are continuing with the annual town meeting warrant. This is coming to you live on Saturday, April 1st, 2023, from Plymouth North High School. It is Plymouth's annual town meeting. We have 162 representatives, 33 are participating remotely, and the remainder are in person at Plymouth North High School in the Center for Performing Arts. The voting has ended on Article 7A, Subcommittee Report E. We'll see the total: 140 yes, 0 no, 1 abstentions. It carries. We'll now continue Article 7A, Motions Subcommittee Report F, as you see the vote from the previous vote. Mr. Canty moves that the town vote to raise and appropriate $113,887,523, items 67 to 70, as detailed in the Advisory and Finance Subcommittee Report F, and to meet said appropriation, raise the sum of $113,887,523 from the 2024 tax levy. It's a majority vote. Mr. Canty.
In a unanimous vote of 12 in favor, 0 in opposition, and no abstentions, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends approval of this section of the budget as detailed in Subcommittee Report F.
Thank you. If we can have the light go off from OTI. Thank you. And any discussion? Yes, George McKay.
Yeah, hi, it's me again. I just have an observation, and I wanted to get some answers on it. If you look at page 16 of the school budget book, they request $319,000 to, not in their budget, but to come out of the town budget in this article. 77,000 of that is out-of-district transportation cost, and I believe there are 3 out-of-district transportation cost line items, and this is only one of the 3. When I asked Lynn Barrett why this school expense was not part of the school budget, her answer was basically, it's not included there, it's included here by tradition. So I said, can we change this tradition? And of course, she didn't comment. So I'd like to propose that next year the school consider putting this in the school budget rather than in the town budget. The other thing, when I was examining one of these line items, the $77,000 spent on the out-of-transportation cost, I noticed it was a 120% increase over last year. So one of the three out-of-district transportation costs went from $33,000 to $77,000, and I was wondering if this is typical of the other out-of-district transportation costs. So I'd like to hear from the school if they can consolidate their budget into one book, number one, and number two, I'd like to have them comment on those out-of-district transportation costs, not only for this one of the three, but the other two. Thank you.
Thank you, and that is Town Meeting Member George McKay. And we're now going to hear from Dr. Christopher Campbell, Superintendent of the Plymouth Public Schools, responding to Town Meeting Member George McKay. Thank you, and welcome, Dr. Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you, Mr. McKay, for your question. That budget is for students that are specifically attending vocational programs outside of our district. So we have students that go to Norfolk Aggie, as well as Bristol Agricultural Schools. They are not within the school department, and those students are allowed to apply to those vocational schools if our vocational schools do not have such programs. So those are students that have gone through that process. My understanding is the reason that it's budgeted on the town side is the state reimbursement that is received goes directly back to the town and not to the school department. So I believe that's why it's been set up that way traditionally.
Thank you, Dr. Campbell, responding to Town Meeting Member George McKay. Any further discussion? If not, Mr. McKay.
No, I have one other question I put on the table, and the other two out-of-district transportation costs, did they go up so dramatically also?
The vocational programs are very expensive. So those tuitions, those are additional students going to additional vocational programs. Yes. You're looking at about $26,000 per student to attend the vocational programs. And transporting the students is an additional tens of thousands of dollars as well. It's a very expensive cost, which is not a part of our budget because we do not have those programs.
Yeah,
But
I guess my question is, those increases in transportation costs for those out-of-district students, is that also the case of the other students in your budget that we transport out of district?
So that would be a separate line. So in our budget, any transportation increases that you see are for our yellow bus fleets, the contracts we have there, and special education transportation. So again, we are also obligated to transport students with disabilities if there are programs that they are attending that we cannot meet their needs for. And it's a very small percentage of students, but these placements are quite expensive, but very important to these students. We're talking about students with complex behavioral, academic, cognitive, physical disabilities that our programs can't meet. We actually have substantial programs within our districts and probably save about $6 million a year in projected costs by investing in our programs that we have in our district. But these are students that have very complex disabilities that are required to go to another school outside. There are about 220 approved private special education programs by the Commonwealth that these students attend. And those costs regarding transportation, yes, they would be because of the students that we're transporting to our programs.
Yeah, I'm not asking whether the need is there. I know the need is there. I'm asking if the cost went up 120% of those in
I'd
the
have
other
to see
areas.
the specific line to know.
Yeah, we can look at that later. Anyway, thank you for your comments.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And we're going to continue with Peter Neville, Precinct 10. Mr. Neville.
Thank you. I'm just, I guess I need some education here as to the process of how a student that wants to go to an agricultural school, generally speaking, is separated out from the general population of students because we do have special education, 501, .5s and .6s and .7 programs. So I'm trying to understand why wouldn't those students be included in your general population budget?
Could you repeat the question?
Sure.
Thank you.
We're talking about out-of-district costs specifically for students going to agricultural schools.
Yes.
Or to, I thought I heard you say, schools that offer a curriculum not within the Plymouth Public Schools. And in your response to Mr. McKay, we talked about special education needs of out-of-district placements, which I'm very familiar with. And I just have to ask, how is it that the folks that go to an agricultural school aren't included basically with everybody else?
They would not be included in our budget because we do not have an agricultural program within the Plymouth Public Schools.
Well, you don't have a 24-hour residential program for a person with autism. They go to a .6 program, or they go to a .5 program, and their transportation costs, I know, can exceed $100,000 a year. They're within your budget. But the person who goes to the Aggie school isn't. It's very simple. Why aren't they included?
Yeah, so in terms of special education reimbursement, let's say circuit breaker, for example, for those extraordinary costs, those funds come back directly to the school department. The vocational tuitions, the reimbursement from the state goes to the town. So those monies for the special education that is within our budget, any reimbursement we get through circuit breaker is in our budget as well. The increase for that transportation was for the addition of one vehicle, one bus for the students.
It just seems odd that you've got the funding totally separate. It seems like it's an administrative transfer of funds within the town and the school.
Thank you. Mr. Brown, please come forward. Welcome.
George Brown, Precinct 7. I think there's a little misunderstanding here. The Department of Education specifically handles the special needs programs. Those who go to an agricultural school are funded by the state through the Department of Agriculture to the towns, but not to the school department. So we're trying to keep the apples in the apple bucket and the oranges in the orange bucket.
Further discussion on the motion that's before us at this time? If not, we're going to go to the vote. And when the light comes on, you'll be voting on the article, Subcommittee Report F. And the light is on. You can now vote. Town meeting members are now voting on the 7A motion Subcommittee Report F. And upon the completion, we'll continue to the next motion that is before town meeting. We are in the annual town meeting warrant. We had an Article 7, which is our fiscal 2024 budget, and we have separated into multiple votes so as we will not be required to have one final vote of the entire budget as we vote separately the various subcommittee reports. That concludes the voting for Subcommittee Report F. And town meeting members, the vote is 136 yes, 1 no, 2 abstentions. It carries. We're now going to go to Article 7B. Article 7B, first motion, Water Enterprise Operating Budget, Subcommittee Report C. Mr. Canty moves the town vote to raise and appropriate $5,434,171, items 71 to 74, to defray water direct costs and transfer $1,621,014 for water indirect costs to the general fund and meet said appropriation. Raise the sum of $7,055,185 of water receipts as detailed in the Advisory and Finance Subcommittee Report G, and you have it shown to you in your records. Mr. Canty.
In a unanimous vote of 12 in favor, 0 in opposition, and no abstentions, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends approval of this section of the budget as detailed in Subcommittee Report G, Water Enterprise.
Any discussion? It's shown on pages 21 in your motions book. If not, we're going to go to a vote, and when the light goes on, you can, actually, Mr. Williams, did you want to be heard? No, thank you. Okay, we're going to go to the vote when the light goes on. When the light goes on, you can begin voting. You're voting on Subcommittee G, and not voting until the light goes on. If you can vote now. We're voting with our handsets, and we're voting with the V-Voter for remote participants of town meeting. 30 seconds in which to vote. You're voting currently on Subcommittee Report G, items 71 to 74, shown on page 21 of your motions book. When we complete the voting, we will get the total, and then we'll move on to the next motion, which will be before you. Town meeting has been in session since 8 o'clock this morning. The vote is concluded. We will now get the total vote for Subcommittee Report G. 138 in favor, 0 no, 0 abstentions. It carries unanimously. So we go to Article 7C and Sewer Enterprise Operating Budget. Mr. Canty moves the town vote to raise and appropriate $7,954,770, items 75 to 79 to defray sewer costs, sewer direct costs, and transfer $454,438 for sewer indirect costs to the general fund, and to meet said appropriation, raise the sum of $8,409,208 of sewer receipts as detailed in the Advisory and Finance Subcommittee Report G as shown in your book. Mr. Canty.
In a unanimous vote of 12 in favor, 0 in opposition, and no abstentions, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends approval of this section of the budget as detailed in Subcommittee Report G, Sewer Enterprise.
Thank you. Shown on page 21 of your book. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll go to the vote when the light goes on, and we will vote on Subcommittee Report G, Sewer Enterprise Operating. The light is on. You can now vote. Town meeting members are getting very adept at voting with their handsets, voting on the V-Voter. It's all merging. We have a hybrid today. It's our first one, first in the state. History again in Plymouth, as we proceed now with a hybrid representative town meeting, which was approved by our home rule legislation that was filed last year, thanks to the legislative delegation who helped to sponsor it and put it through the Massachusetts legislature. We're able to now enjoy hybrid town meeting. The vote has ended. 142 say yes, no 0, abstain 0. It carries, and we move on. The next, Article 7D. Mr. Canty moves the town vote to raise and appropriate $867,598, items 80 to 82 to defray solid waste direct costs and transfer $328,923 for solid waste indirect costs to the general fund, and to meet said appropriation, raise the sum of $1,196,521 of solid waste receipts as detailed in the Advisory and Finance Subcommittee Report G. You have the text. Mr. Canty.
In a unanimous vote of 12 in favor, 0 in opposition, and no abstentions, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends approval of this section of the budget as detailed in Subcommittee Report G, Solid Waste Enterprise.
Page 21 of your book shows items 80 to 82. Any discussion? Yes, Dale Weber, Precinct 3, coming forward. Good afternoon, Mr. Weber.
Good afternoon, Mr. Moderator. Dale Weber, Precinct 3. Kind of a public service announcement here regarding the solid waste enterprise account. Earlier today, you people in a majority supported our initiative from Precinct 3 on traffic and its impacts. The reason I'm tying it to that is one of the problems that we see in our district, in our precinct, and you might see in yours, is the proliferation of solid waste private transfer trash trucks competing against each other for your business. And it's gotten to the point where there's probably 8 to 10 companies competing for your business. Just do yourselves a favor, please, and check the money that you spend, as opposed to if you had maintained your services at the Manamet Transfer Station. That's all I'm saying. Thank you very much.
Dale Weber, Precinct 3. We're debating Article 7D, Subcommittee G.
Mr. Moderator.
Dale Weber, Precinct 3.
The town service is still the best price in town. I forgot to add that.
Thank you, Mr. Weber. Any further discussion on this motion? If not, we're going to go to the vote. When the light goes on, you can begin voting. You can vote now. Town meeting is going through Article 7. We are voting this afternoon. All the votes will be recorded by the town clerk. They'll be available for anyone who wishes to get a record of the town meeting votes today. It's also possible to get a copy of town meeting, which is being cablecast live on PAC TV. It can also be seen on pactv.org. I got a text from someone watching us in Hull, so you don't have to be in Plymouth in order to watch Plymouth Town Meeting. The voting has ended. We will now have the vote for Subcommittee Report G. 137 yes, 0 no, 0 abstain on the solid waste enterprise operating. As you see your votes, we're going to continue. Article 7E, Mr. Canty moves. Town vote to raise and appropriate $3,669,491, items 83 to 86 to defray airport direct costs and transfer $340,000 for airport indirect costs to the general fund, and to meet said appropriation, raise the sum of $4,009,491 of airport receipts as detailed in the Advisory and Finance Committee Subcommittee Report G. You have the text, Mr. Canty.
In a unanimous vote of 12 in favor, 0 in opposition, and no abstentions, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve this section of the budget as detailed in Subcommittee Report G, Airport Enterprise.
Thank you. Kevin Canty is the chair of the Advisory and Finance Committee. Michael Hanlon, Precinct 15.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Michael Hanlon, Precinct 15. I have a question for the town manager, but he's not here. So I'll
ask your question, and we will find someone to answer. Go ahead.
At the precinct caucus, not the precinct caucus, the Committee of Precinct Chairs meeting about a week and a half ago, the town manager was asked a question about enterprise funds, I think, and he made a comment about the airport enterprise fund in particular. And I want to just ask the town manager if I heard him correctly, because I believe that he said that the airport enterprise fund was subsidized by the general government in the amount of $450,000, something like that, which was a surprise to me because I thought that all enterprise funds were kind of self-funded. Revenue comes in, money goes out, they balance, and there's no hit on the taxpayers per se. So I have that question about the airport enterprise fund and, in fact, about any enterprise fund. Are they all self-funded?
So with respect to all enterprise funds, would that be Lynn Barrett, Director of Finance, or Mr. Brindisi, Town Manager? Who's going to be answering Mr. Hanlon's question? I know we also have Matthew Cardillo, Airport Manager, specifically as it relates to the airport. So he asked both questions. We're on airport.
So I can help answer some of the questions. I think some of these comments came out at the last COPC meeting. So in FY24, and the budget you'll be voting on this evening, the town would be subsidizing the airport by a sum of $80,000. Last year, the town, through town meeting, subsidized the airport by a sum of $240,000. The finance director has been working directly with our new airport manager, Mr. Cardillo, to by FY25, that's a zero-sum game. I can refer any other questions over to Ms. Barrett.
Mr. Hanlon, further questions?
So, once again, I'm a little hard of hearing. I apologize for that. But so you're saying there is a subsidy from the general fund for the airport enterprise fund?
Yeah, so through the general fund, there is a subsidy of $80,501 in proposed for FY '24. Last year, there was a subsidy through the general fund of approximately $240,000.
Thank you, Mr. Hanlon. Continuing on with Airport Enterprise Operating Budget. Further discussion? Yes, welcome.
Sandra Mumford, Precinct 15. I thought I asked the question before. You told me that the enterprise accounts, all the enterprise accounts paid for themselves by having the same number of income as you have the same number of expenses. That's an enterprise account.
Thank you. Lynn Barrett, Director of Finance.
So with regards to the airport specifically, in the past, the indirect costs that are reimbursed from the airport to the general fund, we always used to have an offset for the amount of property tax revenue that they brought into the general fund from the leases that they have over at the airport. This past year, we are working with the airport commissioners and the manager to actually fully fund the indirects and not have any offset of the indirects. So that's where their revenues and their expenses are still all paid out of their fund. We're just not, we're offsetting their indirect costs, had been offsetting their indirect costs by the amount of property tax revenue that came in the general fund from the leaseholds. And after next year, we are no longer going to be doing that.
So you've done it in previous years then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Could you tell me what the total of that would be probably?
Well, as you, last year it was $238,000, which was the offset, which represented the property tax revenue from those leaseholds.
Okay, and previous years to that, this was still done?
It was. I don't have that information right in front of me. I
Mhm.
mean, I could get it for you, but yeah.
So in truth, it's then not an enterprise account if the income doesn't offset the
It is an
expenses.
enterprise account. An enterprise account can be offset by the general fund. It can be, it's just an accounting mechanism. The town has always taken the position to have all of our enterprise funds self-sufficient. In the airport's case, it was a little bit different under previous ways of doing it. So that's.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Sandra Mumford, she's with Precinct 15. Lynn Barrett responding. Further discussion under Article 7E motion, Airport Enterprise Operating Budget, Subcommittee Report G. We're currently debating it. And any further discussion? If not, we're going to go to the vote. And when the light goes on, you can begin your voting. As we vote on this motion, vote now. Voting on the main motion from the Advisory and Finance Committee as explained by Kevin Canty, Chair of the Advisory and Finance Committee. Advisory and Finance Committee heard all the articles before this town meeting, and they have made recommendations, and the backup materials are included in the report and recommendations of the Advisory and Finance Committee. We have a separate book for the annual town meeting. We're currently in the annual town meeting, and we are also relying on the motion book that has been presented. The voting has concluded. We will now see the total of the vote for the enterprise for the airport. 125 yes, no 6, abstain 3. It carries. We're going to move on. Article 7F. Ms. Canty moves the town vote to raise and appropriate $1,561,000, items 87 to 88, to defray cable access direct costs and to meet said appropriation, raise the sum of $1,561,000 of cable receipts as detailed in the Advisory and Finance Committee Report G. Mr. Canty.
In a unanimous vote of 12 in favor, 0 in opposition, and no abstentions, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends approval of this section of the budget as detailed in Subcommittee Report G, Cable Public Access Enterprise.
Thank you, Mr. Canty. Any further discussion on this motion? Yes, Dale Weber, Precinct 3.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Before we leave the enterprise accounts, I'd like to follow up on what Mr. Hanlon
I mean, you probably know this, but the sun makes a huge difference.
Go ahead, Mr. Weber.
What Mr. Hanlon
Lack of
touched on.
humidity makes a big
He
difference.
had asked for, could we get a statement from either Lynn or Derek about the other enterprise accounts? Because we're all acting under the auspices that they're all funded by themselves, all the enterprise accounts. So can we get a statement on water, sewer, and this one as well?
There were a question from Dale Weber, Precinct 3.
As to whether they're all funded by the revenue that they take in.
On whether the cable access enterprise operating budget, as well as others, are funded. We have Lynn Barrett, Director of Finance, who will be responding to Dale Weber, who is from Precinct 3. Lynn Barrett.
They are all self-sufficient. The only one that had been treated a little bit differently was the airport.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this? Yes, Michael Hanlon, Precinct 15.
I voted no on the last article, I guess, because as I sat on my seat, I was like, what am I hearing? As many of you know, I've been a town meeting member for, 6, 7, 8 years. I was on the finance committee before that. I've always worked under the assumption that enterprise funds are self-funded. Revenue comes in, expenses go out, they balance. There's no subsidy by the general fund. So to hear today that the airport has been subsidized for the last couple of years, and I guess is going to be for the next year, is disturbing to me from one perspective, and that is that I never heard this before. It's news, and I hope we're not working in a situation where if I don't ask, or if one of you doesn't ask, you don't know. To me, it's a transparency issue. Thank you.
Lynn Barrett, Director of Finance.
I just want to respond to that. So up until 2012, the water and sewer enterprise funds were subsidized by the general fund and had been for many, 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 many years. So my office has always been transparent. I think we've talked about this before. It was just a method of funding the airport under prior administration, and that has changed. So going forward, we're working with the airport to change it.
Thank you. Lynn Barrett, Director of Finance. Derek Brindisi, Town Manager. Mr. Brindisi.
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on Ms. Barrett's comments. It's not fair to say that you have to ask a question for the answer to be heard. In fact, it was myself and Ms. Barrett and Mr. Brothers who have had this conversation with ANF, most recently with COPC, and with select board discussions around this enterprise account. So, and I think that's why the question was raised, because we just had a conversation with COPC, and so one of those members found value in that, having that conversation with the larger body. So we are fully transparent, and we plan to be moving forward.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this article? If not, we're going to move to the vote. When the light goes on, you can begin voting on the cable access enterprise operating budget. The light is on. Please vote. You're voting on Article 7F, motion cable access enterprise operating budget. 30 seconds to vote for town meeting members as we move through the annual town meeting warrant. We have many motions under this article. Town meeting is moving along, discussing, debating, deliberating on the various motions before us. When the light is off, we will then get a total of the vote, and town meeting has concluded its voting, and now we will see the total for the last motion that came before town meeting. And the vote from OTI, 139 yes, 0 no, 0 abstentions. It is unanimous. And we now continue. Article 8 is withdrawn. Article 9. Mr. Canty moves that the town appropriate the sum of $10,574,327 to pay costs of various capital projects listed as A1 through A47 of the 2023 Annual Town Meeting warrant as set forth in the report and recommendations of the Advisory and Finance Committee as shown below. And you have the record of how this will be accomplished. Mr. Canty.
In a unanimous vote of 13 in favor, 0 in opposition, and no abstentions, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Article 9. Approval of this article will fund the costs of various capital projects. A spreadsheet of all the capital items and their funding sources can be found on pages 19 through 21 of the report and recommendations of the Advisory and Finance Committee book.
Thank you. At the start of this annual town meeting, I did, for those of you that came back promptly from the lunch recess, I mentioned a motion that I received, and I'm going to take this opportunity again to explain the concern. When Brookline came to our town meeting this morning, one of the comments they said was that they were very impressed with all of you and how you conducted yourself, how well prepared you were, how you were working as representative town meeting members. One of the things that we have done over the years, put together a motion book in advance. That's not to discourage motions on town meeting floor. But if you know prior to today that you have a motion, it's very helpful to receive it in advance so we can put it in the motion book, and also because multiple people have to look at the motion. So when I was handed this motion, fortunately I have good eyesight because it's in very small print, I had to work with the town meeting member in order to craft a motion that was acceptable, and it required reviewing it with, for me not only to look at it, the town clerk, the director of finance, Advisory and Finance Committee, Jeanette White. So I just wanted people to be aware that it's not as simple as just presenting a motion at the last minute if you know in advance that you're going to do it. The good news is we worked it all out and it's going to be fine. And I'm going to read the motion of the record after I hear from Brendan Brady. Mr. Brady.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Brendan Brady, Precinct 10. First and foremost, just a huge thank you to the Finance and Advisory Committee. They process an enormous amount of information for us to digest these budgets. We couldn't do this without them, and they do it volunteer. So they make the job easy for us. Thank you. And then I was actually curious, line A18, which is the track resurfacing on Plymouth North High School. I'm curious whether 10 years was the expected lifespan on that track, if that's faster than it should have been, because I imagine we would see that come up at Plymouth South in the very near future as well. It's a considerable amount of money, so just curious if there was someone who could speak to the track.
Yes, we're going to hear from the Plymouth Public Schools. I see Dr. Christopher Campbell coming forward, and as he comes forward, again, we are now moving on to Article 9 of the Annual Town Meeting warrant, which is capital improvements. We only have 8 items this year. Dr. Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you, Mr. Brady, for your question. Yes, 10 years in order to do what we're asking to do to that surface is typical.
Thank you. Everett Malaguti, Precinct 2, moves to change the method of funding, and by the way, referring to item A38, to change the method of funding by transferring $399,750 from the sale of lots and by transferring $20,250 from Article 9A-19 of the April 2013 Annual Town Meeting, Parting Ways Cemetery, and by transferring $10,000 from Article 9A-15 of April 2009 Annual Town Meeting Cemetery Software. Mr. Malaguti, on your motion.
Yeah, yes, Everett Malaguti, Precinct 2. My rationale for actually doing this was twofold. It wasn't in a way to be nitpicky with this, but it was actually in a way to free up some of the sale of lots revenue that's in that account. One, because I believe that funds that have been already distributed prior town meetings for similar projects should be lump summed and parting ways, which A38 is actually relating to for the design of that layout, so we can actually create a new cemetery, which is desperately needed in town. But I believe that there was a little bit, in a way, not to the fault of any department head, but I think there was a little bit of lack of understanding when there was an article that was actually going before within capital that got dropped off early in the process, which was for actually using some of these sale of lots revenue to buy double deep vaults to extend the life of the cemeteries, to actually allow there to be time while this cemetery is actually being processed, designed, and built out. So I was actually going to be moving another one forward, but I didn't get everything done in time for that, so I will be asking to put that on to the fall at a later time. But I do believe that this is actually necessary so we can actually have the revenue that's actually in place to support this. And while it may not be the glamorous article to be done on, but I believe that it's prudent to actually be looking at this, since we do need to actually extend the life of our cemeteries while we are finding new space, but also practically use the land and the actual measures as efficiently as possible, reducing labor costs and reducing the cost to the town as a whole.
Thank you, Everett Malaguti. Just to clarify the record, the $20,250, Article 9A-19 of the April 2011 Annual Town Meeting. Any further discussion on Mr. Malaguti's motion to amend? If yes, please, Mr. Siegel.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I think you just clarified it, but I was just going to ask you to repeat the funding number, and it's to clarify with Mr. Malaguti. The change would be to take it from a previous article, funding from a previous article, to about $20,250. Is that correct?
That's correct. Any further questions or discussion? If not, when the light goes on, we will take a vote on the motion to amend under Article 9. It's a motion to amend from Everett Malaguti. You can vote now that you have your hand set. The light is on. You have 30 seconds in which to vote. Town meeting members have an opportunity to vote electronically. If they're in person, if they are remote, they can vote with the V-Voter platform provided by OTI Technologies, which is our vendor supporting us with the electronic voting and the remote participation voting. We are also supported and are grateful for the services of PAC TV. We have many people here today who are working with us as well as back at the studio in order to deliver this on cable TV. The voting is concluded on the motion to amend, and 96 say yes, 32 say no, 8 abstentions. The motion carries. We will now go through the precincts, and as we do, we now have the main motion as amended with these new sources. Any further discussion on Article 9 as we go through the precincts? We will now be voting on the main motion. Because we only have A items, it'll be a majority vote. We have no B items, no borrowing this year. So that concludes the scrolling. So we're now going to go for the vote. When the light goes on, we're going to do the main motion on Article 9, capital improvements for town meeting members to be able to vote electronically now. The light is on. You have 30 seconds in which to vote. And as you do that, we are going to continue with the warrant. We have 20 articles, and the next article will be Article 10, following this voting on Article 9. Town meeting has been in session since 8 a.m. this morning. We will continue to 3:07, at which time we will have a very short recess. Article 9 is currently being voted by town meeting members, and upon the completion of the voting, it is ended. We will now get the total on the vote on Article 9 from the town meeting members. 132 yes, 2 no, 2 abstentions. It carries. All 18 precincts will be shown to you. I will read Article 10. Mr. Canty moves the town vote to amend the personnel bylaws to provide the executive branch of the town the ability to manage non-union personnel in a manner consistent with both the management practices for the rest of the town's personnel and other bylaws and the responsibilities given to the executive branch by the town charter. It's a majority vote. Mr. Canty.
Thank you. And first and foremost, I'd like to thank Mr. Brady for his kind words on behalf of the Advisory and Finance Committee, as well as the room for your applause. Although the role as a member of the Advisory and Finance Committee is unpaid, it is nice to know occasionally that it is not thankless. With that in mind, in a unanimous vote of 13 in favor, 0 in opposition, and no abstentions, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Article 10. Approval of this article will provide the executive branch of the town the ability to manage non-union personnel in a manner consistent with both the management practices for the rest of the town's personnel and other bylaws and the responsibilities given to the executive branch by the town charter. This change will also give the town the ability to respond more quickly to its personnel management and recruitment needs.
Thank you. Discussion on Article 10, Personnel Bylaw. We're here in the warrant. Yes, please proceed.
Yeah, Tom Begley, Precinct 14. Just kind of had a question. I had a question in the caucus, and it's still rattling around in my head. Usually when we have like bylaw amendments or changes at town meeting, we see language changes. This motion, this article simply says, in one case, in the motion itself, to amend, to provide the executive branch, and the article itself saying to replace, but doesn't describe exactly with what language are we actually inserting here into this bylaw. Because as we see, if we don't pass this one, Article 11 coming soon actually has specific lines crossed out and edited. So a little confused to what, I guess maybe it's only me perceiving some vagueness in this article.
Anyone care to respond? Yes, we have Silvio Geneo, the Human Resources Director for the town of Plymouth. Welcome, Mr. Geneo.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good afternoon, everybody. Silvio Genao, Human Resources Director. I think in one of the presentations that I made, I explained that the goal was then to take the personnel bylaw as it exists and basically convert it into a personnel code. So the language as it exists will allow us then to have the ability to make policy changes as necessary, as Mr. Canty mentioned, in order to be more efficient with the management of our staff.
Thank you. Any further questions, Mr. Begley?
No, thanks.
Thank you. John Hammond, Precinct 18, welcome.
Thank you. John Hammond, Precinct 18. I'm going to turn so you're the people I should be addressing. There's something I don't understand about. First of all, I did not know that the town management needed our permission to make rules for personnel rules. And what I understand from this article is you're asking our permission to make rules, and you'll let us know later what they are. And I think it would make more sense to say, these are the changes we want to make, these are the rules we want you to approve. And I know you need flexibility. I think it's horrible if every time you want to do something, you have to come back to town meeting. It would slow things down. But that's my point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hammond. Any further discussion? Did you care to respond?
Yeah, if I may. That's an excellent point. However, one of the points that I made in the different caucuses that I attended and at the select board meeting in advisory and finance is that sometimes we don't have the ability to know when those changes are going to be needed. For example, if there's a change coming from the federal government or the state government in regards to management of personnel, we need to be able to act quickly so that we are in compliance with those laws. If we have to wait every time we go to town meeting, for the period from when that law changes and when we come to town meeting, we'll be in non-compliance, which is not a good thing for the town.
Mr. Hammond, further comments?
I have a question further. How is that different from what you'd have to do for everybody else?
That's an excellent question. So, for example, 95% of our personnel in town right now fall under a union contract or collective bargaining agreement. There's only 26 employees plus seasonal employees who fall under the personnel bylaw. When we need to make a change to any of the contracts, we just simply pick up the phone, call the union representative, or if they have a change, they call us. We sat down in a meeting, we go over the changes, we come to an agreement, shake hands, and write what's called a memorandum of agreement or a memorandum of understanding. Those changes, they get implemented into the contract, and that's it. The whole process could take up to a couple of days from like a week, and it gets done right away. Doesn't have to come to town meeting. The only folks who we have to make changes like that is for non-union personnel at the moment, and they have to come to town meeting. So right now, we have two different processes for those two different groups, and that's what we're trying to change.
Thank you.
I don't have any more questions. I don't know what the answer is.
Thank you, Mr. Hammond. Joseph Hutchinson, did you care to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Joe Hutchinson, Precinct 17. In large corporations, when an organizational structure changes, they generally are compensating for overlap or, it's sort of a mergers and acquisitions on a corporate scale. And I'm wondering if the changes that you're referring to have to do with an overall structural plan, so that right now we understand more or less the reporting structures in town, and does this have anything to do with a reorganization? And if it does, can you describe what the details of that might be? Thanks.
No, thank you for your question. Our sole intent right now, as I mentioned, is to be more efficient and be able to move and change with things as circumstances and personnel management changes. It's really just an efficiency process. We have no interest in making big time reorganizations, at least from our department who sponsor this article.
Thank you. Derek Brindisi, Town Manager.
Mr. Hutchinson, to your question about reorganization, as you know, having reviewed the charter allows the town manager to reorganize departments with a recommendation to the select board. So we're not talking about a reorganization today. That's a separate process that's already built into the charter.
Thank you. Mr. Hutchinson.
I had spoken with Mr. Brindisi earlier about this, and I understand his desire to reorganize. And what I was just inquiring about was whether this had anything to do with that. I'm sure that when that pops up, Derek will share it with us, and we'll understand the benefits of the reorganization. So.
Yeah, no, again, great question. So again, today's discussion has nothing to do with the reorganization. I've shared my ideas with many folks in the community around reorganization. And so we could have done some small reorganizations last fall, but I thought it was best once all the dust settles. We have a transition going on in the Department of Public Works. We have a community resources director that's retiring in a couple of weeks. At that point, and at that juncture, then we would propose some type of reorganization. Again, it's a public process. It goes to the select board. The select board could vote that up or down, or could amend those proposed recommendations.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Christopher Houle, Precinct 14, followed by George Brown, Precinct 7. Let's bring in Christopher Houle, who's remote today.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. My question follows up on Mr. Bagley's comments. It's not about the merits of the article, rather the language, the specific language in the motion. And my question is for legal counsel to opine as to if this passes muster here. It's to see if the town will vote to replace the existing bylaw and so on. So my question or comment rather is, the article says to replace, and there's nothing presented to replace it with. So again, my question's for the legal counsel, if this will pass sort of the legal muster here to accomplish what the objective of this article is.
Mr. Houle, I can answer that question, and the answer is yes. And the reason I can answer is because town council has reviewed with us all of the motions that are coming before town meeting, and this motion is in proper form in compliance with the law. Thank you. George Brown, Precinct 7.
George Brown, Precinct 7. Article 10 is merely, it's more housekeeping than anything else, to be blunt about it. Presently, the town works with the union stewards and union presidents in a direct manner to handle issues as they arise. We have a state government that changes employment law almost hourly, and half the time, if they have to come back to us to do some of this stuff that we're asking for in 11, which is because of a state mandate, we're already non-compliant. We need to have the ability to be compliant at the time a change comes through. And believe me, the current State House wants to put through a whole bunch more changes that affects how we handle such things as seasonal employees. That's a whole new ballywhack that's coming out. Let us give the management the opportunity to take care of this and keep us current and keep us out of trouble with the law.
Further discussion on Article 10, Personnel Bylaw? If not, we're going to go to a vote. It's a majority vote. When the light goes on, you can begin voting on Article 10, the Personnel Bylaw. Vote now. Town meeting members are voting on Article 10, the Personnel Bylaw. You're voting with your handsets. You're voting with the V-Voter. Town meeting members have had large participation today with this hybrid town meeting format. We have brought in 33 town meeting members who are not with us in the building, but they are with us participating remotely. You've heard from many of them today, and you've seen them participating remotely through the support of the technology provided by PAC TV and OTI Technology and all the staff who have worked in the planning and preparing a town meeting. The voting has ended. 118 say yes, no 13, abstain 5. It carries. And as you look at the vote, we're going to continue, and Article 11 is withdrawn since Article 10 has passed. Point of order. Yes, please come to a microphone.
Perhaps it's just my confusion. Betsy Hall, Precinct 16, but in my report and recommendations book on page 143, it says to replace the existing Town of Plymouth classification and certification plan and personnel bylaw. But in my motions book, it says to amend the personnel bylaw. So which one did we vote on?
We voted to amend.
On the article, well, someone mentioned replace. One of the town meeting members mentioned replace.
I read into the record amend. This text has been approved by
Okay, so it's what's in the motions book.
It's what I read into the record, not necessarily what's in the motion book, because sometimes it changes between the book until what I read into the record. What I read into the record, which is then confirmed by the town clerk, that's the official record.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And moving on to Article 12, Mr. Canty moves the town vote to accept a sum of money that the state declares as available funds as the state's share of the cost of work under general laws, Chapter 90, said funds to be expended under the supervision of the town manager. Mr. Canty.
The Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting take the money. Approval of Article 12 is recommended after a unanimous vote of 13 in favor, 0 in opposition, and no abstentions, and it will enable, if passed, this town to accept State Highway Chapter 90 funds for repairs and reconstruction of public roads. While the estimated amount of Chapter 90 funds for fiscal year 2024 was not known at the time this recommendation was made, Plymouth received more than $1.5 million for fiscal year 2023. The town expects a similar amount in fiscal year 2024 unless there is a change in policy and/or the state's financial health.
This is a majority vote. This is likely one of the articles that will be in a future consent agenda, along with the reports of the various boards and committees, the continuation of committees. We've had a number that have been not debated and unanimous. Any discussion on this? If not, we're going to go to the vote. When the light goes on, you can vote on Article 12. Article 12 is on the roads. Oh, actually, no, I don't have somebody. You can vote now. 30 seconds in which to vote. We had one person who voted early. Mr. Duggan, you may want to enter your vote again. You've got to wait until the light goes on. We're voting on Article 12, Chapter 90 funds, roads. It's a majority vote. Town meeting is continuing. We will be taking a short 1-minute recess shortly, and thereafter we will continue absent a motion to adjourn. We are currently voting on Article 12, Chapter 90 funds. When the light is off, which it is, the vote ends. And we will now see what the vote is for town meeting members. 138 yes, 0 no, 0 abstentions. It carries unanimously. And as you see your votes, we'll move on to Article 13. Mr. Candy moves the town vote to transfer the sum of $1,109,928 from the Town Promotion Fund created pursuant to Chapter 4 of the Acts of 1993 for programs and projects that enhance the beautification, recreational resources, public safety, promotional and marketing activities, events, services, and public improvements. Mr. Canty.
In a unanimous vote of 9 in favor, 0 in opposition, and no abstentions, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Article 13. Approval of this article will allow expenditures from the town's Promotions Fund. The Promotion Fund, created by special legislation, is funded with 45% of the receipts from the hotel motel tax. The Visitors Service Board oversees expenditures from this fund. Expenditures include funding special events and celebrations. The Town Promotion Fund is also used to pay a marketing and promotions contract with C Plymouth/Destination Plymouth, which provides the town with television and print advertising around the country and abroad, maintains a waterfront information booth, and provides for the operation of the C Plymouth website.
Further discussion on Article 13? Yes. Mike Mabini, Precinct 3, we're debating the Town Promotion Fund. Mr. Mabini.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I just have one question. On the, the town promenade, $200,000. Can somebody explain what that is, please?
Anyone care to respond? We have Lee Hartman, Director of Planning and Development, coming before us at town meeting once again. Mr. Hartman.
Thank you. So that was money requested by the previous DPW director for the Promenade Improvement Program. He has since indicated, and I think currently with the current acting town manager, that that project is no longer moving forward. So that money was made available for this year for other events and other projects.
Thank you. I think you're referring to the acting director of Department of Public Works. Acting town manager, Mr. Hartman.
It's getting to be a long day already.
Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, we're going to go to the vote when the light goes on for Article 13. And town meeting members will be voting now. You're voting on Article 13, the Town Promotion Fund. And as we move through the warrant, we're continuing chronologically in the annual town meeting warrant for the Plymouth Spring Annual Town Meeting, coming to you live April 1st, 2023. We are at Plymouth North High School in the afternoon session. We are located on Aubrey Street in the Center for Performing Arts. Town meeting has been voting on its articles electronically and with a V-Voter platform. All of them are recorded by the clerk. Voting has ended on the Town Promotion Fund. The results from OTI, who are supporting us, are as follows. Town meeting members have voted 133 yes, 0 no, 1 abstentions. It carries. Article 14 is withdrawn. Article 15, Title V Repair Fund. Mr. Candy moves the town appropriates the sum of $400,000 for the purpose of financing the following water pollution abatement facility projects: repair, replacement, and/or upgrade of septic systems pursuant to agreements between the Board of Health and residential property owners, including without limitation all costs thereof, as defined in Section 1 of Chapter 29C of the General Laws, and all costs incidental related thereto, and that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the Select Board, is authorized to borrow $400,000 and issue bonds or notes in the text as shown in your paperwork. Mr. Canty.
In a unanimous vote of 9 in favor, 0 in opposition, and no abstentions, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Article 15. Approval of this article will allow the town to borrow $400,000 through the Massachusetts Clean Water Trust to fund the Title V Betterment Loan Program. These low-interest loans are available to serve town residents meeting certain income criteria on a first-come, first-served basis to fund septic system replacement or repair. Historically, the funding for this program has been refreshed as funds are depleted.
Donald Williams, Precinct 8.
Hi, Don Williams, Precinct 8. I'm curious as to whether more money is available or if we're limited. It's a rhetorical question, really, but I think we should start looking into doing more of this because septic health is going to get more and more important for our waterways and our drinking water eventually. So I'm just curious what the thoughts are of the town in moving making more of these loans available in the future.
Lee Hartman, Director of Planning Development, responding to Donald Williams, Precinct 8. Mr. Hartman.
Thank you. So this program is done through my office and through the Office of Community Development. So we've helped 296 homeowners to date. What we do is we borrow between $200,000 and $400,000, and as that money starts to go down, we'll come back to town meeting for reauthorization. So I'm trying to find the number. I think this is the 15th time we've come to town meeting. So instead of borrowing right off $2 million, we borrow it in these $200,000 to $400,000 amounts, and then as that money starts to get spent down, we come back for new appropriations. So as we start to see the number go down, that we'll need more, and again, we'll wait until we get down to the 100,000 range, and then we'll put it either on a special fall or an April town meeting. So it's worked out well for the last, I think this is probably 15 years, 20 years.
Further discussion, Article 15, it's a 2/3 vote. No further discussion. We'll go to the vote when the light goes on. When the light goes on, we'll begin our voting. We have 30 seconds in which to vote. You can vote now. You're voting on Article 15, Title V, Repair Fund. It's a 2/3 vote of town meeting because you have borrowing. And with the borrowing, we require a 2/3 vote, and we have language from bond counsel in connection with this particular article. As with all borrowing, we have language from bond counsel, and we don't deviate from that language at town meeting when we have a matter involving borrowing, which again is a 2/3 quantum of vote. We'll continue with the warrant. The voting has ended for this particular matter, and as we continue, we're going to get the vote. 139 yes, 0 no, 0 abstentions. It carries unanimously. Article 16 is withdrawn. Article 17 is a motion to increase false alarm fines. Mr. Canty moves the town vote to amend Chapter 1, Sections 1 to 4 fine schedule as listed in Article 17 of the 2023 Annual Town Meeting warrant. It's a majority vote. Mr. Canty.
In a vote of 11 in favor, 0 in opposition, and 1 abstention, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Article 17. Approval of this article will increase the fines for repeat false alarm offenses with the intent of encouraging alarm system owners to upgrade and or repair their systems in order to prevent false and accidental alarm calls, which can hinder the department's ability to respond to other incidents in a timely manner.
It's a majority vote. Any discussion? If not, we're going to go to the vote when the light goes on Article 17. When the light goes on, you have 30 seconds to vote. Vote now. You're voting on Article 17 to increase false alarm fines. It's a majority vote. This is Plymouth's annual town meeting. It's coming to you live on the afternoon of April 1st, 2023. We are in the afternoon session of our annual town meeting. We're in Article 17. We have 20 articles in the warrant, and we will continue at this time with the vote. The voting has ended. We will now receive what the vote is, and the vote will be provided. 138 in favor, 1 no, 0 abstentions. The motion carries. It is now 3:07. We will take a 1-minute recess as required by our town charter. You can stretch. When the recess is over, we will continue with Article 18. Betsy Hall, I'm going to call on Betsy now. Betsy has a point of order. I believe it's a follow-up to an earlier question. Betsy Hall, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Moderator. Thank you very much. I was asking the moderator, is what's in our book, report and recommendations, can that be different from what's in the motions book when we pick that up, and then again be different when he reads something else, not totally different, but somewhat different into the record? And he answered me yes. So somebody mentioned today replace for Article 10, but it was in the motions book as amend, but then something different was read into the record. So I'm requesting, I had not heard this before in my 20-some-odd years as a town meeting member, so I'm requesting that in the future, Mr. Trifletti or whatever moderator we have, if what they're reading into the record is, I think we should let him retire someday. If what we read into the record is going to be different from what's in the motions book, could he alert us? Because he does read pretty fast, and it might be one word different. So could he alert us that what's in your motions book, I'm going to change by this, whatever you change, whatever it's changed by. Do you understand that?
Well, I understand. So I'm going to say these are all living documents, and what controls is ultimately what the town clerk records from what she receives and hears at town meeting. And it is the case that from the time it comes from the Advisory and Finance Committee and it comes to us, there may be motions. We may have met with town council at the motions meeting. They may have some suggested changes to make it legally correct. So yes, there are definitely changes at most town meetings from the time you have the book till the time you get the motions book till the time you're in town meeting floor. And it can be right up to the time that we're debating the articles. So I may not always know, but we will certainly endeavor to try to alert people when there are changes. But I'm focused on what is before me and not necessarily what's in that book or even what's in that book, because we're working on it right up to town meeting. So we'll do the best we can, but thank you.
Okay, thank you, because I really depend on this motions book to know what I'm voting on. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And Article 18. Mr. Canty moves the town vote to amend Chapter 23, Sections 23 to 11, license fees of the town general bylaws by adding the following. And you have the text. It's a majority vote. Mr. Canty.
In a unanimous vote of 12 in favor, 0 in opposition, and no abstentions, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Article 18. Approval of this article will amend the town's general bylaw, Chapter 23, Section 23-11, license fees, to permit the town to charge a late registration fee in regards to dog licensing. Any monies recovered as fines or penalties shall be paid into the general fund of the town.
Majority vote. Any discussion? Yes, Mr. Arienti.
Bill Arienti, Precinct 6. I agree with the article, with the motion. However, I'd like to amend it by inserting the word renew into after record each year who renew license said dog. Because right now, the way it's written is if you go and get a license for a dog in May, you're paying $15 extra.
No. First of all, I just want to again remind town meeting members that when it comes to amending a bylaw, it would be very helpful to receive it in advance because we may possibly have to research it. It's unlike other motions where you might be adding money to the budget or reducing money. So just again, a cautionary tale for all of you. But I'm going to call on the town clerk, Kelly McGilreath, and she will respond.
Okay. Sorry, I just noticed it. That's why I brought it up now.
Okay. So the last line states the late fee will be waived for any new dogs to the community registered after the deadline. So if you have that new dog that comes in on May 15th, we will not charge the late charge.
Thank you very much. Further discussion on Article 18?
Carl Mason, Precinct 18.
Carl Mason, welcome.
I was wondering what problem this is intended to fix.
Mr. Mason, questioning, and again, the town clerk responding.
Thank you. One of the biggest questions I got in November, December, January is what's the date, the deadline to register your dog? So this problem does two things. It encouraged people to get them registered by March 31st. So we have the public health and we have the rabies shots on file to avoid the $15 charge, and it gives me an answer to those residents saying if you don't register by March 31st, you get hit with a $15 late charge.
Thank you.
Peter Neville, Precinct 10.
Sorry for this question, but are all fees and fines covered by bylaws in this town? So if I have a book that's late at the library and I'm fined, is there going to be a bylaw? They want to increase that? So if they're not, I guess should we look forward to, in the future town meeting, to amend or expunge this bylaw?
So we'll get you an answer, but throughout this town meeting, there have been a number of questions posed that are really outside the scope of the article insofar as they're not focusing on what before us, but I'm allowing it because I think it's helpful for all of you to understand how all of this works together. So I'm going to call on the town clerk again to respond to Peter Neville.
The Mass General Law allows for many of the fees to be approved by the Board of Selectmen, and I believe in the early part of the winter, they did review some fees and made some changes. There are certain fees that are in the general bylaws that were done at whatever time the general bylaw was made, such as the fire alarms and the dog licensing. So that's why in order to change those fees, we had to come to town meeting and not through the Board of Selectmen.
Further discussion on the motion on Article 18? If not, we're going to move to the vote when the light goes on. Hold on, I'm sorry. Let's not vote yet. Let's go to Precinct 9, Catherine Holmes, who's participating remotely. Good afternoon, Catherine.
Hi. Good afternoon. Thank you. Catherine Holmes, Precinct 9. Can I get some clarity on this? Because it's been brought to my attention by a lot of people that if they didn't, in the past, had they not paid their dog license fee, that they would receive this very harsh, very scary letter from the town saying that there's a warrant now out for their arrest. Can someone put some clarity around that for the general population around whether or not there's a warrant for people's arrest when they don't pay their dog licensing fee?
Kelly
And if that
McElreath
is still accurate?
responding to scary letters.
Yes, it would be very helpful.
So the general bylaw also states there's a $75 fee for unlicensed dogs. So the past practice of the town clerk's office was come the fall, if dog owners did not register their dog, there was a $75 fee handled through the civil disposition, I believe, which is considered a violation and can go to the court if the fee is not paid. So that was the past practice. I am still planning on doing that, and I'm really hoping that the $15 fee, people would just pay that and not get to the $75 option. Again, giving people a deadline on when to pay for their dog licensing.
Mr. Moderator, may I respond, please? Because I have a follow-up question.
Yes, go ahead, Catherine.
So is it, to the town clerk, wasn't there always a fee if you didn't pay it on time? Because I had a dog that passed away and I got charged a fee, and even though the dog died on January 15th, I'm still irritated by this, by the way. When my dog died, it was very sick, and I ended up getting paid, getting charged a fee. So I thought it was $15, but so is this an increase in the fee?
To the town clerk.
The fee for a dog license is $15. What this bylaw would do, if approved, is ask for an additional $15 if you come in April 1st or beyond to register the dog. So every year that you have a dog, it's a $15 licensing fee.
All right. Well, then
Thank
my
you.
comment would be, Mr. Moderator, that I would not support this because we should be promoting people to take in animals, especially at our shelter, and not be charging these types of fees. And we certainly should not be sending out warrants for the arrest of good citizens for maybe a financial burden. Thank you.
Further discussion on Article 18, which is an amend the bylaw, Chapter 23, Sections 23 to 11, charging a late fee. If not, we're now going to go to the vote. When the light goes on, we'll vote on Article 18. Town meeting members will have 30 seconds in which to vote. When the light goes on, you can now vote Article 18. While you're voting, I want to again thank all of you who are participating today, town meeting members, the various boards and committees for all your support, support from OTI, from PAC TV, from the Plymouth Public Schools, in particular to the town clerk, Kelly McElreath, and the second assistant moderator, Melissa Matinzi, the entire Advisory and Finance Committee for all of your hard work, the chair, Kevin Canty, and Jeanette White, who worked so hard with the Advisory and Finance Committee. Thank you to all of you. The vote is 102 yes, no 32, 0 abstentions. It carries. As we scroll through the precincts, we will move to Article 19. Article 19 is to amend bylaw Chapter 173. Mr. Candy moves the town vote to amend 3 sections of Chapter 173 of the town general bylaws. 173-1, ballot voting. 173-3, meeting and election dates. 173-11, number of town meeting members, terms of office, as printed in Article 19 of the 2023 Annual Town Meeting warrant. You have the text, Mr. Canty.
In a unanimous vote of 12 in favor, 0 in opposition, and no abstentions, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Article 19. Approval of this article will amend the town's general bylaw, Chapter 173, to update the number of precincts and town meeting members to be consistent with Plymouth's recent re-precincting and make the bylaw language related to the date of the town elections consistent with the election dates specified in the town charter.
Thank you. It's a majority vote. Any discussion? If not, we're going to go to the vote when the light goes on for Article 19 of the Annual Town Meeting warrant. The light is on. You can vote. Again, a thank you to everyone who helped make this hybrid town meeting possible. From my opinion as moderator, it was highly successful. We had an opportunity to have our in-person town meeting members meet and debate together with those participating remotely. I think we're going to be a model for the rest of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and for other representative town meeting. So again, congratulations to all of you. The voting ended on Article 19, and we will see what the vote is. At this time, 131 yes, no, 0, abstentions 0. It carries unanimously. And as we go through, we are going to see that Article 20, we have no motion, no action. We're scrolling through the precincts on Article 19. And as we do that, we have a motion to dissolve from Kevin Canty. Mr. Canty, on your motion to dissolve.
Thank you, town meeting. It's been a pleasure.
Any further discussion on the motion to dissolve? If not, when the light goes on, you can vote on a motion to dissolve town meeting. The light is on. You can now vote. We are voting on a motion to dissolve, and upon completion of the vote, I will call the vote. Again, thank you to everyone assembled here today for your patience and understanding as we navigate our first hybrid representative town meeting. We have the motion before us, 126 yes, no, 5, 0 abstentions. This town meeting is dissolved at 3:23 p.m. Thank you.